Yeah, we're recording them as well, so
Okay.
they'll go online, so to kind of pass out to everybody else. But we're happy to have you though. All right, well we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Cody Taylor. I'm the Assistant Director of Chapter Services, and I'll be helping walk through the Brother Development Director manual tonight. I'm here with Christina Parle as well. Christina, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Christina Parle. I'm the Director of Chapter Services and Conduct for the fraternity. So thank you all for being here this evening.
And yeah, so we're going to be talking through the Brother Development Director Manual. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to throw it, in the chat or unmute yourself and ask as well. We're going to be talking through the manual, and then we'll have a little bit of time allotted at the end to kind of run through any questions that you may have. So yeah, to get started, I guess to preface this all, this is the updated manual. We reviewed and updated all the executive officer manuals and the standards director manual. They were, in the past, they were a little bit longer. So we, cut it down in size. I think this manual is only like, I don't know, 12 pages long. So it's a lot shorter than manuals in the past, but it was done very intentionally, to make it a little bit more digestible. So it's just, the important information really. So yeah, to get to dive in, well, 14 pages, I was a little bit off, but yeah, so we obviously have our mission and credo, officer structure, governance documents, and then we'll be talking primarily about the basics, considerations, and recommendations of the officer responsibilities. So mission and credo, we obviously, this is in all manuals, but I think, especially important for the role of the BDD in understanding the mission of the fraternity and our values of ZBT. So we don't have to dive into it right now, but definitely something that you should be, very familiar with. Right here we have our officer structure. This is something you should also be familiar with, but definitely something to just have right there to review within the manual. These are the governance documents, which we have links to a few of them. Constitution, ZBT code, and other kind of policies as well. All of these can be found on like zbt.org or on the resource center in MyZBT as well. Here we have a few other resources from MyZBT. All of these can be found in the resource center. If you haven't been to the resource center within MyZBT, all you got to do is basically just log in, and it's going to be on the left-hand side, a yellow column under communications is resource center. And that's where all of these items live and a lot more other resources as well. So here's the bulk of the responsibilities. I'm going to go to the next page as we're going to kind of dive in here. But basically, what you have right here are the basics, considerations, and recommendations of each responsibility. So as you'll see with the first one, we have the basics, and as a lot of them, you'll see the basics as well. But the basics are the mandatory, you must kind of do these things also, like they're building upon the responsibility. They're not recommendations. They are, those are mandatory as well. Considerations are things to think about. Recommendations are recommendations, things that we've seen from other chapters that work, and recommendations that headquarters like to make as well. So to dive right in, I'll start off with the first one, and Christine and I will kind of hop back and forth. But the first one is that the Brother Development Director attends the transition program and sets goals and expectations of self each term. You might be thinking, I didn't do a transitions program, or it didn't really look like this. That's okay. That's something that we're pushing all chapters to start doing. We're creating some curriculum to kind of supplement chapters doing this as well. But ideally, what this would look like is it's executed by the president at the beginning of each officer's term or the executive board's term. And you work together as an executive board to set goals together, expectations of each other. And then with these goals that you create, devise an action plan to create, to achieve those goals during your term. So for the BDD, you want to keep track of resources specific to your position. The big one being the journey manual. That's a massive document. So just, be familiar with that as much as you can be, but that is something that you'll be working with a lot, obviously.
And then for the second one, and Cody, if you want to just zoom in like one more percentage, just because I know it's hard for me to see, so it might be hard for others to see. But for the second one, it is attending all exec board meetings and chapter meetings. Most of you are like, yeah, we do this. But the big piece about this is to be able to report all related information. Sometimes people like to get up there and say, I have no report, for this meeting. Always have something, right? Always have something to share with them, whether it's 3 weeks from now or tomorrow, to be able to keep people in the groove of hearing from you and what you're doing. So you should always be reporting on Brotherhood events, ritual events, the journey, as well as we recommend always telling people the why. Like instead of saying, oh, we have to do initiation this weekend, like, oh, we get the opportunity to do initiation and here's why we do initiation. And always trying to remind folks of the why for every single event that you all do. And if you need support with any of that, we're happy to help. As Cody said, the manual, which is your specific document, is cumbersome. And so making sure that if you need support or you have specific questions, to just, call your headquarters staff liaison or your advisor and ask them for support.
So the next point is that the BDD implements and utilizes the Journey program for all brothers. Portion is that is all brothers. The Journey is a 4-year education program, which involves every single chapter brother. It's not a new member specific program. So basically, to kind of implement and utilize the Journey, you're going to be working with a lot of people in the chapter, specifically on the executive board, the programming director on scheduling Journey events, and putting that into the calendar for everyone. You'll be working with the provost, obviously, as well, and we'll kind of get into that later. But you want to include all Journey events within the master calendar to remind brothers, a week in advance of all upcoming programs. Any modifications to the Journey that you make just need to be approved by your staff liaison. It's totally okay to kind of switch things up or tweak it to make the Journey, a little bit unique to your chapter, we're happy to help you with that. But, you just got to talk to your staff liaison to kind of run through it beforehand. Like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to us. You want to think about, how to make the Journey unique to your chapter while following, regulations and expectations. So whether that's, whatever tweaks you want to make to the Brotherhood retreat, or, specific, local history that you want to teach in the Brotherhood orientation, things like that. Those are just things to think about, but also, like I said, just check in with us beforehand to make sure it's all okay. The Journey manual is going to have all the information for Journey programming. Like we said, it is massive. So when you're looking at the Journey manual, just utilize the Control F to find exactly what you're looking for. That's a good tip that we like to tell everybody, to just make it easier to find anything when you're looking for it. But yeah.
And the only thing that I would add to Cody's point, for those of you who maybe haven't been joining these ZBT from home programs regularly, all of these programs are recorded and put on the ZBT YouTube channel, which means that there is a recording of the Journey program. And so we did a review of the program last week. And so if you are like, I need to learn more about it, please feel free to watch that video. But if you're also like, I have no idea how to transition the Journey from in-person to virtual, we talk all about that in that recording. So making sure that you're popping back over to that as you need to. So the BDD, of course, also directs and oversees the provost. If your chapter does not have a provost, either because you never have had one or your chapter is small enough to where maybe the provost is another person's job, they've got a couple of jobs, that's totally fine. So maybe you have a chapter of 7 and you're the BDD, then really you should probably just assume the role of provost as well. But if you're a chapter of 100 or 50 or 20, really there should be a distinguished BDD and provost. And so when overseeing the provost, right, it's making sure that you are taking care of the journey parts that are addressed for you, and then making sure that the provost is seeing the pieces that they should be responsible for. So the provost should be doing the Brotherhood orientation. However, of course, there are segments that are presented by all different exec officer roles. The provost should also be facilitating segments of the Brotherhood retreat, as well as planning and leading the entire milestone workshop, and selecting and organizing educational programs in conjunction with the programming director. They also should be tracking Brothers' core and elective experiences. If any of those things did not sound familiar to you, then you likely need to watch the journey recording. So making sure that you are getting in deep with the journey manual. And again, we've already mentioned this, but there's also an audit, which makes it more digestible. And so making sure that you're looking at that as well. And so your role is to make sure that the provost is doing what he or they need to be doing, that you're checking in with them, that they're giving you updates, and you're helping them execute their duties. And then we always recommend that you make a plan for what the journey is going to look like at the start of each term, because as Cody said, it's not just when you're taking new guys. So if you're a chapter that typically takes new guys in the spring, you still should be running the journey in the fall. So really thinking about those things as well. And then you as the BDD really need to set expectations with the provost, right? Here's what I expect. Here's how we will communicate or check in with each other, and making sure that you're talking about those often. And then of course we recommend meeting regularly throughout the term and before the beginning of each academic term.
All right, sweet. Well, moving on. Kind of, a seemingly simple responsibility, but the BDD directs and plans all rituals. It is, obviously very important, so it's a little bit more complex than just the responsibility kind of states. But basically, instructions to set up and execute all rituals are in your chapter's gold books. Your chapter should be in possession of 12 gold books. If it's not 12, or if you look inside and the most, whatever the date is not the most recent one from 2019, contact us, and let's work together to try to get you guys the updated ones, as they were all updated in May 2019, I think it was. So just, we want to make sure that you have 12 and then you have the most recent ones. The BDD shall provide all information about rituals to the programming director to put on the calendar, and remind your brothers at least a week or so in advance about each ritual. Think about the planning, logistics of planning all ritual events, such as reserving space. If you reserve space for initiation, just make sure that you do that well in advance, or whatever event it may be. Think of who you'd like in attendance. If you'd like to invite alumni to initiation, or if you're initiating a legacy and can invite his father, grandfather, brother to initiation, that would be sweet. Try to think of those things as you're planning initiation, or all rituals, I should say. And then, do you have the necessary equipment to conduct ritual? Specifically, all ritual regalia. We have an inventory resource on iZBT, where you can kind of see if you have all ritual regalia. And if you don't, that's fine. Just talk to us, and we'll work with you to get it. But just make sure that you have all the right equipment for any events or any rituals. Review the gold book instructions and script as well prior to the event. You don't want to, you're still reading out of it, but you don't want to be, eyes glued to the gold book as going through each ritual. You should be familiar with kind of how it works beforehand. And you want to assign roles well in advance so that each brother may also review their position as well prior to the start of it.
And then the next one is the Brotherhood Development Director collaborates with the Programming Director and Provost on developing the programming calendar. So here's the thing. We're not asking the BDD and Provost to build out every single program, but we are asking you to help the Programming Director direct the education that is going to occur. And so what that means is based on the milestone workshop that your provost is leading and the core and elective experiences that come out of the milestone workshop, then you all are going back to the programming director and saying, hey, here's what our guys are interested in. Here's like the, experiences that they want to get. How can we create programs that go based on that? And the other thing is you all can also, you don't have to do educational programming where it's like, okay, all 25 of our guys or all 150 of our guys need to show up at one time. You all can do programming for the freshmen, then for the sophomores, then for the juniors, then for the seniors, or you can do it by families, if that's what you call them, or big little pairings or whatever. So you don't have to do things the exact same way that you've always done them. And so really thinking about those different ways that you can break groups up to do educational programming. And so, of course, really helping the programming director think about how does everything that we're doing relate back to our mission and credo, like we talked about up front. And then using the journey, right, to help drive what the educational programming is that you all are going to do. And then having at least 6 educational programs throughout the course of a term or year, kind of just depending on the other things that you all are doing as a chapter. So ultimately, this responsibility, y'all, is all about providing value for your dudes. And especially in the COVID-19 era, this is really important. So like, how are you going to do things that matter to people that also encourage them to stay and pay and do all of those things that you would like for them to do?
The next point is that the Brotherhood Development Director oversees and executes the Big Brother Mentorship Program outlined in the Journey Manual. So the Big Brother Mentorship Program connects brothers, new brothers with one, older brother to provide assistance, guidance, support throughout his life. Big and little brothers connect formally and informally on a regular basis. So basically within the mentorship program, there needs to be an application. So, making sure that you're creating that application. It's the BDD's responsibility to create that application, to pair brothers based on interests, career aspirations, goals, and not just, how close they are, or, if they played the same sports in high school or something like that. It should be on a deeper level, on a more, meaningful level. You want to set expectations for the big brothers to ensure that the little brother experience is a positive one. This goes into the Big Brother training program that accompanies this program. So basically, within that training program, you'll set the expectations for the big brothers to make sure that they understand what a healthy big little relationship looks like. So some of the things to think about is what time in the academic term will you begin this program. Typically it'll be after, like the Brotherhood orientation, and, a few weeks after that. It's kind of like a good sweet spot, but up to your guys' discretion on the exact timing. We recommend, selecting and pairing big brothers, based on, looking at the Journey Manual, and utilizing some of those resources from the Journey Manual as well. Like I said before, it is a massive document. Use the Control F to go directly to Big Brother mentoring resources to get a little bit more on the Big Brother mentoring program.
Okay, and then for the next one is the BDD plans and executes the Brotherhood building activities. Here's the thing. These are the prescribed ones that we've always done. ZBT game day, a progressive dinner to be ZBT Teams course, and community connection. Now, of course, not all of these are relevant for the virtual space. But again, I'm going to plug the Journey recording that's on ZBT's YouTube channel. Cody beautifully walks through how you can move all of these things virtual. So a ZBT game day could maybe be a video game competition that you all do, or something that you can do in the virtual space. A progressive dinner might be, hey, we're all going to get together at dinner and eat together virtually. And we kind of go line by line with those. But basically, again, you can go to the Journey Manual and Control F, because we don't ever recommend that you just read straight through the manual, and find the different breakouts for these and some of the things that you should be discussing during these activities. The things that you really need to consider and think about are the logistics of the event. Even in the virtual space, you still need to think about the logistics of the event, especially if, let's say, you're going to do a community connection, right? So you're going to do some type of service that you probably could still do in person. You can pick up, trash like in your town or city or wherever. You can still donate blood. You can still do some of those things. Or even Cody talks about on the Journey program recording that, there's a chapter that is tutoring young kids in the city or town that they're in. And so they can do all of that virtually. There are a lot of ways that we can still be giving back through that community connection piece. And then, of course, always making sure that you're working with the programming director about scheduling and making sure you're not scheduling over anything that they're doing. And that's why we highly recommend that there is a term calendar that everybody is working off of. And then, of course, these need to be occurring throughout the entire year. So you need to do them throughout the entire year, and likely each term, if you're at a quarter school, at least some in the fall and some in the spring. And then we always recommend splitting up groups between like their families or classes or majors, but not just letting people like pick where they want to be, because then you are not going to get any level of interaction between guys that wouldn't typically interact.
The next point is that the BDD plans and executes the Brotherhood retreat. I know we keep referring back to the Journey webinar specifically, but we kind of dive a little bit deeper into the retreat within that webinar as well. But the basics of the retreat is that, brothers will spend at least a day together working through activities that build relationships, explore the identity of the fraternity, and set priorities for the future. This is in the Journey manual as well. Use the Control F tip also to find that directly. I think the big thing here, though, is just, pairing, doing something fun and engaging, and pairing that with, some of that content, those conversations that we want to have, and thinking of a good way to do that. Make it fun for everybody. It should be fun. It's not meant to be a class or anything like that. So, trying to think of how you can do that. I know this, isn't necessarily applicable in the virtual space, but if, consider where the retreat will be held, I guess it is still kind of applicable if, deciding between Zoom or something else. But if you're having the event away from campus, be sure to make reservations in advance. And if the event is off campus, make sure that everybody is able to get there. Think of who will lead each portion of the retreat. Like I said, there's different portions of, different activities that we require within the Journey manual. So just make sure that you're familiar with that. And, a recommendation as far as like timing goes, the Brotherhood retreat should occur at least one full day and occur early in the second half of the academic term of an academic term. So, you can have your Brotherhood retreat twice a year, once each academic term. Yeah.
And then the next one is that the BDD directs and oversees the Brotherhood Development Committee. If you do not already have a committee and your chapter is larger than 9 people, this is something you need to look at. And so making sure that you have a committee that is helping you lead and execute the Journey programs. And that can be your committee has a specific job at each of these programs, or they're saying, this is what's worked in the past and this is what hasn't. Let's try this. Or they're helping you brainstorm or whatever it may be. You're also going to want to think about how many people do you need on your committee to execute the things that you're doing. How you identify who is joining that committee. Do you have an application system? Are people just raising their hands and saying, pick me? Like, what does that look like? And then always, how will you delegate the work and responsibilities in that committee? Because you don't want people to be on a committee that you're never going to give them anything to do. So figuring out how you're going to delegate. And then we always recommend that if you've got a handful of dudes on the committee, that they span the different grade levels and or classes, families, those kinds of things. And then you should be meeting regularly. Now, for some committees, that might be weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. And that can also fluctuate, right? Maybe you are meeting really heavily when you've got a lot of things going on with the Journey, and that slows down as the semester or quarter, kind of progresses. So either way, you are overseeing the committee and how that works and what it looks like.
Next portion is that the BDD communicates with position specific advisor or a chapter advisor on a regular basis. So, basically this is really important as far as keeping, your alumni advisors involved in all programming related to strengthening the Brotherhood, ritual events, journey events, such like that. Think about when you will meet your advisor, how often you will meet, whether it's a phone call, whether it's in person, a video call, and think about what updates you'll need to provide, ritual event plans or, journey event plans as well. If there's ever a reason, or, a concern that you're unable to get a hold of your advisor for, or, or you have a question or anything like that, you can also contact your staff liaison as well. If you don't know who your chapter's specific staff liaison is, your chapter president will know, or you can just contact ZBT headquarters as well.
Okay, these next couple are things that you all might not be as familiar with doing or may not typically have as much of a hand in, and we want you to get more involved. So the first is the BDD assist the exec board in developing expectations and Brotherhood quality standards that apply to the entire Brotherhood and communicating these at each term. So some of your chapters, right, you might already have Brotherhood quality standards. Some of you may not. If you don't have them at all, we need you to create them, as well as additional expectations that might be more specific or might give more understanding to the current Brotherhood quality standards. If you have Brotherhood quality standards, it is part of your role to be reviewing those to make sure they're updated and make sure they're current and relevant, but also educating the brothers on these, right? And so these, of course, are updated as an exec team. They're not just you or just the standards director or just the president. This should be a collective piece, while also understanding that the Brotherhood quality standards and expectations are used to manage the accountability process through the standards board. And so this really should be a transparent information because that process should be transparent. One of the things that you all should really think about is how will you discuss and agree upon those expectations as a chapter. So it's not enough to just come up with them as exec. That information also needs to be transparent and shared with the chapter. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, giving them the why. We highly recommend that you give them the why. So if you say, all brothers of the Sigma chapter of Zeta Beta Tau will achieve a 2.7 GPA. So when you're explaining that to the chapter, what is the why? We want to excel in academics. This is where the average number is for our campus. So this is where we need to be, whatever that may be. But ultimately, ambiguous expectations make it really hard to hold people accountable. And so when you're saying, I don't understand why Joe Schmo falls down drunk at every single social event we have, well, if you've never been clear about what the expectations are for how to act at a social event, that's probably why. And that translates across position type, but particularly situated within the BDD because you are really impacting their overall member experience.
And the next point is that the BDD will collaborate with the president, operations director, standards director to conduct the semi-annual Brotherhood Review vote, SBRV. The SBRV is a required procedure for every chapter to determine if each brother is maintaining his responsibilities and obligations as a brother of ZBT. So those brothers who are determined by a vote of over 50% to not be maintaining their responsibilities are thus, expelled from DBT. The 50% standard can be decreased at the chapter's discretion. So, but it cannot be increased. So, if you want to make it easier, I guess, to get voted out or to get, voted that you're not maintaining the responsibilities, that's okay. You can make it 40%, 30%, whatever it may be, but you can't go up. You want to provide any information required from the BDD to, within the SBRV vote. So those are going to be your progression in core and elective experiences, journey events. So, going back and thinking about everything else that we've discussed, just making sure that you're keeping track of all those things as well. We have a means of collecting and storing core and elective experiences through headquarters. So you can reach out to us and we can share that with you as well. And that's a good way to hold on to that. And then just making sure that you're, keeping attendance of journey events to share within the SBRV. We also have an SBRV tool located in the Resource Center for executing the semi-annual Brotherhood Review vote. So we also have more resources and information on SBRV in the Resource Center as well. So that's a good place, to kind of get some more help with SBRV also.
And then last, but definitely not least, you need to keep a hold of all of the things that you do throughout the year. So we need you to be able to pass off information to your successor by preparing the materials that you use throughout the year. So what were the best dates and times for the programs that you did? What worked, what didn't work? What are you like, oh gosh, please, we can't sit for 2 hours and do this thing, or we need to make this modification for next year, or hey, here's everybody's core and elective experiences from 2019 to 2020 school year. Keep a hold of those things. And of course, the manual, especially if you've made notes in the manual that you think might be helpful, and anything position specific that would be helpful to your successor. And we want you to think about, how are you going to compile that information throughout the year? Are you going to keep a hard copy of it? Are you going to have a Google Drive where all of that information is collected? But just really considering how you're going to keep that together. And of course, we recommend using something like Google Drive or Dropbox, or something that is easily transitioned when needed. And so this is really just to help with the transition program, starting back up at the beginning of the position description, really thinking about how we can make that transition easier. So those are the 14 responsibilities of the Brotherhood Development Director. What questions do you all have? Are there things that you're like, we need to go back to this, or I'm doing this, should I be? What questions are there? And feel free to unmute or drop things in the chat.
I mean, I've already put on several events, but I'm having an awful time getting any kind of engagement from any one of them. And I don't know if it's maybe I'm just not asking the right questions, or if they just don't care.
Okay. Oh, and tell me what chapter you're from.
Delta Lambda at Monmouth College.
Okay. Okay. So I do think, and this is just my opinion, but and you all tend to do a lot of programming. So I think deciding what is most needed. Do not feel like you have to do 536 programs. I think saying, what are our top priorities? And then going from there. I don't know if you all are in full swing of collecting core and elective experiences, but if you are, making sure that your programming is actually what your guys want to see. I know a lot of times with some of our chapters, it's like the exec board's like, oh, we want to do a program on anti-Semitism. It's like, okay, is that what the other 10 guys in the chapter want to do, or is that just what exec thinks is cool, or like will fulfill something for SOE or whatever? Because there's got to be a balance between like what our guys want to do and what we need to do to like fulfill the things that we have to do for ZBT or for Monmouth. And then I think the other piece is balancing that with fun. I think that's been Delta Lambda's issue sometimes, is you all are like program. And it's like, okay, when are we going to stop and just like chill and hang out and just like be a social org together? And so I think that is some of it. And if you're not getting participation, I'd ask everybody to get on a call and say, what am I doing that isn't working? Because I'm offering a lot. So how can I make this better for you all? Because that might alert them to like, oh, we're kind of being shitty, right? Or they'll say, yeah, oh, and let me tell you all the things that like you need to be doing differently. So that might help. Other questions that folks have? That was a great question. Thank you, Owen. Okay, if you all have questions, please, we are more than happy to connect with you. As Cody said, if you don't know who your staff liaison is, let us know. We're happy to tell you who that is so you can know exactly who to reach out to, or your chapter president can share that information with you. And then you can email us information and ask questions, or you can text us. You can have our cell phone numbers. Not a big deal. We're happy to talk through stuff with you. But thank you all. And for those who had to jump on late, if you missed the first half of the program, there will be a recording afterward. It will be on ZBT's YouTube channel, and you can catch the first half of it there. But Thank you. Feel free to stay around if you have a question, but we really appreciate you all being here this evening, and have a great rest of your week.